Alright everyone, another video refuting the cherry pickers. Always remember, individual polls are goddamn meaningless, but aggregates, they tell a different story. They tend to be much more close to the mark, and if you get enough data points, you can even visually see trend lines within polling for approval of a law, approval of a politician, matchups between politicians in an election, and so forth. Trump's response on COVID, and everything else under the sun. If you have enough data points, you can get a pretty good reading of reality, as long as your sampling size and methodology are reasonably appropriate. Biden's lead a couple of weeks ago over Trump was about 6 points in the aggregate. Now, all of these people who crow about, oh, he's 10 points ahead, he's 5 points ahead in this, he's leading in Texas. Again, use an aggregate. And if the aggregate's made with too few data points, it's not even meaningful to begin with. You get more data points later in the election. By the way, we haven't even had a debate between Biden and Trump. We don't even know if there's going to be a national convention for the Democrats. We don't fucking know what's going on. We're not going to know until the end of summer. It's going to be September before we can get a good measurement of this matchup. Biden's lead was about 6 points. Now it's 4.4. Biden has managed to decline by 1.5 points more in aggregated matchup. Now, Trump's actual support in this polling is bottomed out as well. Biden, though, is at the lowest point he's ever been at, and apparently still falling. The fact is that so long as Biden remains off the campaign trail, it's a problem. Biden's problem is twofold. If he's off the campaign trail, his support tends to wane. If he's on the campaign trail, his visibility increases, that helps him, but then he can make mistakes, and that causes his support to wane. There's a reason why I've consistently said Trump will win against Joe Biden. Trump's support, meanwhile, climbed back up. It's above 45 again. It's still at its long-term mean, roughly, a little bit below that. It looks like he lost about 0.5 point of aggregated support over the economic downturn, coronavirus, whatever it happens to be. Again, the coronavirus response, initially very popular, was leveled off some more. Not responsible for any significant improvement in his polling numbers. Simply part of his organic rise since last October. In matchups between Hillary Clinton and Trump on Election Day, Hillary was up by more than 2 points. Biden is not very far ahead of that right now. He's riding at 4.4 above. Trump does not have very far to go. If he hits 47, by the way, that would reduce that gap potentially to about the same level it was in 2016. Keep in mind there's a wild card factor at play here, which is that enthusiasm among Democrats in 2016, while it wasn't sky high, was higher than it is today. Enthusiasm among Republicans somehow magically is higher now than it was in 2016, where the Republicans had a bit of an advantage. There was a turnout gap, certainly, that favored Trump in a slew of states where the polls said he was a few points behind. You'll probably see that and then some in this election. If the election were held today, it would be so close, it would be basically a 50-50 proposition. I think that 4 points or 5 points would be about the break-even point because of differential turnout. Joe Biden simply, I don't think he can get people to the polls. Most of the young voters in party wanted Bernie Sanders, and most other voters are just not enthusiastic about the dude. That's why the gap is 6 points higher in enthusiasm between Trump and Biden, 6 points higher than the gap that existed involving Trump and Hillary Clinton. Anyway, Biden's lead probably will continue to fall. I don't imagine, it's basically not a lead at this point. The fact that he's doing better than Hillary in a handful of the battleground states potentially is offset by the fact that in others he's struggling. Of course, you look at Florida polling, Bernie Sanders is definitely weighed like a chain around the neck of the Democratic Party. This is affecting them down ballot. Look at what's happening in CA 25 right now with Mike Garcia. He improved his lead in the second wave of ballots that came in, actually, that they were counting. His lead grew a little bit. I think it's above 10 points, actually, as we speak. I'll check up on that, and I'll do, on Twitter, I'll analyze it later, maybe. It couldn't be worse for Joe Biden. Of course, Trump will probably tend to increase his support towards the 50-50 point by Election Day. Biden's support has waned now for months. It's managed to work its way down, and he's never been insurmountably ahead of Trump in these matchups. Again, fixing for outliers, about 4 or 5 point lead. That's pretty mild. I believe Hillary Clinton was actually further ahead of Trump at this same point in 2016. I believe that's the case. Of course, then he had a non-incumbent race. Trump wasn't president yet. Hillary Clinton is not the same kind of candidate that Joe Biden is. And then, of course, the election has been thrown in uproar anyway. Things are not the same right now because you don't have active rallies being held. You have basically a digital-only election for the foreseeable future. Biden is having real goddamn problems with that. His first true digital rally that he had there for Florida fell apart. It was basically unwatchable, and they set the initial video to private and then uploaded a very, very much shorter, heavily edited version that made Joe Biden look less clueless. He's standing around on stage, didn't know they were recording, didn't know where to stand, fucking saying weird shit. He's got problems. Another thing is that even though Trump's support in this has also fallen, you don't have enough of a gap, I think, for a credible third-party run, which, by the way, would rob Trump of one of the keys to the White House. You're not going to end up with that, probably. Although there probably will be, the Libertarian Party will do better than it did in, like, 2012, probably, but I don't think it's going to do as well as it did in 2016. Let's just put it that way. With no serious in-party challenger, but a very serious in-party challenger within the Democratic Party, which is Bernie Sanders, did get enough momentum to be, if not viable, at the very least, he has a large core of support. The schismatic nature of the Dem Party, their demoralization, in part, which will be due to CA25, I'm sure, and the fact that they don't have a clear leader. Their candidate is a steward, not a leader. It sinks their chances. I don't think that the Democrats can pull it off. I'm becoming more and more certain over time as I look at the numbers and the trends of Trump's support, matchup polling, the direction of the shift in political views within states. As I look at that, I've struggled to cobble together a map in which Biden can win. Fixing, of course, for the fact that there are only about a couple dozen states that are technically in competition, unless there's a massive, massive paradigm shift. Like Texas, I don't credibly think goes blue. But to get Biden over the electoral total, arguably he would need to do that. Somehow Joe Biden, of all people, with his enthusiasm gap, would have to turn long-standing red areas blue. That would require that either Biden get a brain transplant or that Donald Trump systemically fall apart. Now, of course, there's still months and months till the election. Trump could have a heart attack. Trump could end up with an actual scandal, something that pisses off independent voters as opposed to boiling down along partisan lines. A war could break out. You could see the start of a true Great Depression and crippling economic conditions. People are literally in breadlines. Or things could improve vastly. That changes the outcome too. Trump could curb stomp Biden out of existence at the second debate or something. Assuming the trajectory is relatively stable, which is the most likely course, I would favor Trump to win by about the same margin he did in the last election, maybe a little bit more. I think that Minnesota's in play. Virginia's definitely in play with what Northam's doing over there. Yeah, I would say, well, Florida's probably a lost cause for the Dems if the trajectory remains the same. It wouldn't even be as close. Like, they wouldn't have an auto recount sort of situation. Probably win by a couple of points. Biden's lead has shrunk. Everyone's talking about how Biden's got this long-term stably. Biden grows his lead to double digits. No, he's not. Use aggregates, not single polls. His lead has slipped by more than a point in the last 2 weeks. That is significant. By the way, that point of movement throws 2 or 3 states into swing status or takes them out depending on which direction that it goes in. A point and a half, that's very meaningful in competitive regions. One last thing, though. Matchup polling on a national level, while it matters, it only matters when you are comparing it to polling in the states. Keep in mind, Hillary Clinton won the popular vote by a reasonable margin. It's just that turnout was all in California and New York. It didn't help her in competitive states. That's another thing. The enthusiasm gap is not going to be even. In states or areas where things are going considerably better under Trump than they had been before, enthusiasm for him will be higher. In areas where Joe Biden is more well-received, enthusiasm will be less. There will be less of a gap in enthusiasm versus Trump. That's just the way that it goes. It's not evenly blanketed across the country. That matchup polling, really, you can compare it to 2016, and that gives you a general barometer to go by. That allows you to tear your measurements, so to speak. That's about all. Peace out.